Coming up on iOS today, Rosemary Orchard and I, Micah Sargent, help you figure out which iPhone is for you. Stay tuned.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is iOS Today, episode 770, with Rosemary Orchard and me, Micah Sargent, recorded Tuesday, September 16th, 2025, for Thursday, September 18th, 2025. 2025 iPhones. Which is for you? Hello and welcome to iOS Today, the show where we talk all things iOS, iPadOS, watchOS, HomePodOS, and all the OSs that Apple has to offer you. Although today, things will be a little different because we're talking about the iPhone. I am one of your hosts. My name is Micah Sargent.
And my name is Rosemary Orchard, and while it may not be seasonally appropriate, I'm ready to look at walking on air with the new iPhones.
I'm looking at walking on sunshine. So in this episode, look, we know by now, surely you as an iOS Today listener have read a little bit about the iPhones, or perhaps you watched the event, or perhaps you watched, if you're a member of Club Twit, the coverage with Leah Laporte and yours truly, where we had kind of live commentary for the event going on. So, you know about the iPhone. You know, Apple announced new iPhones at the awe-dropping event. Now it's time to kind of understand what exactly Apple has announced. And that, of course, starts with understanding the models that are available. There's the iPhone 17. There's the iPhone 17 Pro and Pro Max. And there's the iPhone Air. So when it comes to kind of understanding the difference between those, that's what we aim to do today, and talk about the screen sizes, the sort of materials that it's made up with, the chip inside, and then kind of think about what might be the right choice for you. Before we do that, though, Rosemary, I would love to know what iPhone is going to be making its way to you, and tell us about your pre-order process. How did things go? How did they not go? Et cetera, et cetera.
Well, I have pre-ordered a 512 gigabyte iPhone Pro, so that's a 17 Pro in dark blue. I am intrigued by the orange, but it did not really speak enough to me to also inflict it on my dad, who will be the person to inherit the iPhone 1 year later, because that's what my family do. We have a hand-me-down system where iPhones get at least a 5-year lifespan, if not longer. And my dad's probably not gonna love the orange, but the dark blue he was excited by. So yeah, I set myself up with a pre-order ready in advance of the Friday, because after Apple announced the new iPhones, they pop up a little thing on the Apple Store app, give it an hour or so, and then you can set up your pre-order. And then about 3 minutes before, I started checking to see whether or not the App Store is back up, because occasionally it mysteriously pops back up a minute or so early. It did not.
What time is it there?
That was 1 p.m. my time, which is pretty nice. So I got lucky over here. It was just lunchtime for me. That didn't work, so I forced quit the app a few times after the bell tolled, which was an alarm on my iPhone. Yes, because I'm that kind of nerd. I managed to get in, pre-ordered it, and got a launch day delivery confirmed straight off the bat, which was great. I think over here in the UK, because if you buy directly from Apple, there are no carrier options. It's just all, any carrier. So that makes it a little bit easier for them. So they don't have to worry that they're running out of AT&T iPhones versus Verizon iPhones or whatever. So you're less likely to see launch dates slipping that quickly. But yeah, it went pretty well for me. But I know your experience wasn't quite the same as mine, but I believe you and I may be iPhone twins this year.
Yeah, so certainly not as smooth. A couple of things. I, like Rosemary, went through the same process. And in fact, if you are I always forget, you don't have to be a member of Club Twit to get this. My last episode of Hands on Apple was all about how to pre-order the iPhone and walks through the process that Rosemary talked a little bit about there. So if you are, wanting to prepare for next year, if you had any issues, you can kind of study up with that video that shows you how to set the pre-order within the app and everything that's involved. So I did that as well. I knew from the time that the phones were announced until it came time to do the pre-order and the setup of the pre-order that I wanted the deep blue. I think the orange is gorgeous, but I am not usually a fan of orange. And so I just appreciated it as a striking, beautiful design. But as a person who loves green, I knew that the deep blue and the green were going to pair well together when it came to, if I'm getting a case and it's not a clear case, then I want it to be green. And I wanted to try Apple's tech woven case. So oddly enough, more than anything else, it was actually the green tech woven case from Apple that sold me on the deep blue iPhone. So I went in and I set up a pre-order for the 512 gigabyte iPhone 17 Pro in deep blue. iPhone 17 Pro Max in deep blue. And that is the one that I at the time to go through on Friday to do that pre-order. Now, for those of us in Pacific time, pre-orders begin at 5 in the morning. It's what's funny is I used to live in Central Time, and when I lived in Central Time, Apple still had pre-orders set with Pacific time people in mind. And so it was very late in the night in Central Time. And so when I moved to the coast, I thought, oh, finally, my iPhone pre-orders are going to be at a great time. And it just so happened that the year I moved was the year that Apple shifted its times away from being kind to Pacific timers to everyone else. And so, yes, for me, 5 in the morning. So I had an alarm set for 4:55 a.m. I think I woke up a couple of minutes before my alarm went off, and I sort of got ready, and it was taking a minute, but stuff was happening where it would switch from like, we're getting ready to bring you in to hold on, it's almost time. And so I didn't do any force quitting or anything like that. It seemed like everything was locked in. And one thing you don't know for sure, that's never been made clear to us as outsiders is it possible that if you sort of start up on a new device and so your IP pings their servers, that it's going to reset your place in line? There are all of these little fears, right, that you have as you're sitting there, in my case, at nearly 5 in the morning. Is it going to be what I expect it to be? And am I going to be able to get the phone that I'm expecting? Well, 5:05 rolled around, and that's when I finally got into the store, and I went through, boop, 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 did because it's just a couple of steps since I already had preset everything, and I was getting quoted for the 24th delivery or actually it might have been the 25th delivery on the 24th or the 25th. For folks who don't know, Apple's iPhone launch day is this Friday, the 19th. And so that's not great. As a person who does what we do for a living, you want to get it as soon as possible, particularly because I was aiming to do an episode of Hands on Tech this coming Sunday about the new iPhone. Well, I went through and tried everything. I tried, instead of getting delivery, I tried having a pickup, no pickup. I said, okay, well, I'll change it to a different color. So I switched. I was like, oh, I could do orange. I tried orange. No, there aren't going to be any until the 25th. I tried silver. I did everything while still keeping with the iPhone 17 Pro, even changing all the way storage sizes. I was just curious. Okay, well, what if I did 2 terabytes? I wouldn't do it, but just to see. That was still quoting later than the 19th. So I said, well, if everything is going to be later, then that's fine, because everyone who's not part of the actual review embargo, who gets them ahead of time, won't get them until I'm getting mine anyway. So I went through with my original deep blue 512 17 Pro Max. And And then I was speaking with Rosemary leading up to the show, and Rosemary said, or asked if Rosemary got, launch day quoted. She did. Awesome. I did not. Boo. But you get what you get, and you don't throw a fit. And she said, "Well, here's the thing. Some people I've heard have gotten an email saying that their launch day or that their shipping date is actually the 19th instead of later on." So the next morning, I got an email, and it said, "Hey, your iPhone will arrive on the 19th." So. Yay! Sounds like, yes, we're going to be phone twins, and that is exciting. That is kind of the process this year with pre-orders. It's, you never know what you're going to get when it comes to pre-orders and the app versus the website and how people kind of explore that. But what we're left with this year is, again, a lineup of 4 phones, the 17, the Air, the 17 Pro, and the 17 Pro Max. Now, let's start with the iPhone 17, because Rosemary and I were both talking about kind of understanding the different phones and the lineup and coming to terms with the fact that this year, there's not an iPhone 17 and iPhone 17 Plus. There's simply an iPhone 17 with a 6.3-inch display. That, again, is a little different from what we've seen in years past because Apple offered a larger screen size in that 17 mode. And of course, there are several pretty colors for the 17, sort of a light lavendery purple, a green sage, and a sort of smoky or cloudy blue, as well as just your standard white and black. The 6.3-inch iPhone 17 has an aluminum frame. Important to note, this is not the same as the aluminum unibody we'll talk about with the Pro, but is just an aluminum frame. And all of Apple's new phones have that camera control button as one would expect, as well as the action button, which one might not expect. So all of the phones all have all the buttons. Again, of Apple's new phones, because Apple is offering the iPhone 16e. We won't be talking about that today. And the other thing to note is that the only phone that has the sort of simple A19 chip, just the A19 chip, is that iPhone 17 model. The other phones we'll talk about today have the Pro chip. Now, I would love to hear kind of your thoughts, Rosemary, and learning about the iPhone 17 and its 2-camera system. It's got a dual fusion camera system, the main camera, and then the ultra wide camera, plus that updated front camera that I was pretty excited about.
Yeah, I'm excited about the front camera. And when they updated the regular iPhone several years ago to come with more than one camera versus the Pro, which comes with all the cameras, I started going, oh, maybe I should go for the regular model. Unfortunately, the lens that I would say I use most frequently is the telephoto lens for zooming in, that 5 times optical zoom. That gets me every single time. So that is why I always end up leaning onto the Pro side of the iPhone rather than the regular model. However, it is pretty exciting. I think that center stage front camera is going to be really great for a lot of people because a lot of people do want landscape selfie photos, but they don't want to have to flip their phone because then you end up, holding it at a wonky angle. It's a little bit more difficult to control. You're more likely to drop your phone and everything. So this way, you've got that slightly easier option. And, the 2 cameras, they're good cameras. The fact that it's a full 48 megapixels with everything now, because previously it was 48 megapixels, but you'd end up with a 12 megapixel photo. And I'm not 100% certain if that's been completely updated, but I believe it's now 24 and 48 megapixels versus the 12 that you would end up with before. But it does also have, that 2x zoom option in there. And, it's pretty cool. tetraprism lens that they were talking about, that's in the Pro phone. I think that's where it's going to get very exciting. But this is a great option for people who are looking for a smaller phone that fits in their pocket, perhaps, but they still want good cameras, because that is, let's be honest, one of the key things that sells new iPhones every single year. People want great cameras to take photos of pets, kids, whatever they're doing. My dad has recently completely given up having any other camera, except for he does have a DJI Osmo Pocket, which I gave him because I upgraded my DJI Osmo Pocket. So he has that for video and panoramic photos and an iPhone, and that's it. And this is a man that used to carry multiple, and I literally mean 2 DSLRs with multiple lenses with him everywhere he went. He now just has an iPhone in his pocket. So, some of that is just, willingness to carry gear has significantly lessened as he's got a bit older. But a lot of it is just that the phone cameras have got that much better, and it's a camera that's always in your pocket. And if you're going to use the camera it's always with you, you want it to be a good one. And the iPhone 17 offers great cameras.
It really does. I think, bearing in mind that you can only get the smaller size, the 6.3-inch display. Of note, it is bigger than the iPhone 16e display, which is 6.1 inches. So it's still an expansive display. But I do think about people who have their phone set to that larger visual size, that sort of zoomed display size. And in that case, that could be what shifts you away from the 17 kind of climbing up the line more than anything else. Because outside of that, without making a huge jump to the Pro, if the Air is sort of the in-between, right, you are getting 2 cameras, which is fantastic, as opposed to just the one. And you're getting more battery life, likely more battery life, plus all of the other stuff. And more options for zoom by way of having, that dual camera system. So in that way, the 17 is really quite a prime choice if you're looking at it in comparison to the Air, which we'll kind of talk about next. One thing, again, to note, though, is if you regularly have your display set to zoom, where it is sort of bigger icons, bigger text, bigger everything else, then maybe you do want a larger screen, and that could be the one thing that bumps you up from this device. You're getting that aluminum, which is lightweight. You're getting the everything else, like Super Retina XDR display, the Pro Motion technology, which means that it can both raise and drop the screen refresh rate to accommodate what you're doing on the screen. You get the always on display, you get the dynamic island. All of that is part of it. So it's really the latest and greatest in so many ways. The only difference there then becomes if you need a larger screen. And that is where perhaps the iPhone Air is something that could speak to you if you're not wanting to make the jump all the way to the Pro, because the iPhone Air exists in the in-between space in terms of cost. So let's talk about the iPhone Air. The iPhone Air is 6.5 inches that's the screen size. And it is, as Apple says, the thinnest iPhone ever. It's a little bit thicker than its current iPad Pro, so not the thinnest device Apple has ever made, but the thinnest iPhone ever. It does have the Pro chip in it, so you will get sort of fantastic performance. It has a titanium frame, which makes sense. You need something that's quite strong if you're going to make a phone as thin as this phone is. Now, with it, there are a few caveats, right? First and foremost, one camera on the back. It's called the 48 megapixel fusion camera system. And they call it that because of the way that it's able to kind of serve as a multiple lens situation by doing some digital cropping after the fact. It will let you have zoom options, including 1x and 2x. So it doesn't have obviously the 0.5x, which is that ultra wide option that you get with a dual or triple camera system. So that's something to bear in mind. You got one camera on the back, but it's a great camera. It's, going to take 24 megapixel and 48 megapixel photos. It uses all of Apple's Fusion magic to take the best photo that it can. And here, the big thing is, of course, that it is as thin as it is, as light as it is. And that's something that you don't get with the other options that are available to you. So I think that when you mentioned earlier, when we were kind of talking about all of us wondering who is the iPhone Air for? Perhaps it is that person who needs a larger screen size, and that is the main thing that they need more than anything else. They need a larger screen size, and you can keep it at that larger. I think about people who may have some sort of, movement issues or some fatigue that takes place. So having something that's very thin and light while also kind of being bigger, that's nice.
Yeah, I could see my grandmother really liking this. She won't be getting it because the way that my family hands down iPhones means that she's going to be, about 5 years away from the iPhone 17 Pro that I will be getting in a couple of days when we record this episode, But I could see it being a good phone for her because she needs the larger screen size. But a 6.9-inch iPhone 17 Pro Max, has to carry it while she's also, struggling a little bit with her mobility. She's not completely stable on her feet. Her Apple Watch does say that her walking cadence is a little bit off. Surprise, surprise. She's just had her second knee replacement of the year. So nobody is surprised by that. But it does mean that, something as big as an iPhone 17 Pro Max, it comes with a certain amount of weight to it. And if you compare the weights on the two of them, it is quite a chunk. The iPhone Air is 165 grams or 5.82 ounces, and the iPhone 17 Pro Max is 233 grams. So that's almost 50% more, or 8.22 ounces. So it weighs about 50% more again. And that is, a chunk, which, especially when, if you don't have huge hands, I can comfortably hold this. I'm actually holding an iPhone 16 Pro, not a 17 Pro Max. I've got a case on it. I'm being a little sneaky, but I can comfortably hold this. I can, if I, stretch, I could get a 17 Pro Max in my hands, but then I'm going to be struggling to reach and touch the things on the screen whilst also holding it comfortably. As it is, I already add a MagSafe pop socket to the back of my phone to make it a little easier for me to use, because I'm not willing to go down a size horizontally, or, diagonally from this phone size. But for the people that need a little bit more space, the fact that it's also thinner, that does actually help with holding it. Not just the weight, but it means that, that thickness that would be taken, that would take up some space in your hand, that would be less of an issue. It might be a little easier to grip. Equally, it might be a little more difficult to grip, but I'm sure somebody's going to come out with a chunky OtterBox case for it. I'm sure OtterBox are working on it already. But the iPhone Air does have one thing that none of the other iPhones this year have to offer, and that is a shiny new Apple MagSafe battery designed just for the iPhone Air. Now, they do say it has all-day battery life. I'm not sure it would have all-day battery life for a user such as myself, or perhaps you, Micah. I find myself charging my Pro during the day a little bit, but it does have a shiny new MagSafe battery that will only be compatible with the iPhone Air because of the height that it takes up. So you'll be able to use it via USB-C with other devices, but what is the point in purchasing the Apple MagSafe battery for the iPhone Air if you can't MagSafe it onto another device? I personally wouldn't. I'd go for one of the other options out there. But yeah, it looks pretty nice. To be honest, I want to go into an Apple store and have a play with one and see how it feels. But personally, you can pry my 3 camera lenses out of my hands. But, well, you can't. That is the point.
Nice
I need
try.
my 3 lenses. I need that telephoto. I literally used it earlier today. Admittedly, it was to take a photo of my tent because I packed up my tent in my parents' back garden after drying it out overnight and this morning. And I won versus the tent. It is a 6-man XL tent, and I got it back into the bag by myself, and the bag zipped shut. And then I stood inside my parents' back door and went, I really should have taken a picture of that, but I've just taken my shoes off. And I was like, 5 times optical zoom. Perfect. And I use it all the time. So, you're not getting away with taking my telephoto lens away from me. I'm sorry. But it is, honestly, most people probably don't care about the telephoto lens. They care about the ultra wide more. That's why Apple's done it. To me, that's flipped. I would want the telephoto lens more. Maybe that's why they put it on the Pro Max to try and the Pro to try and sell more of those. But yeah, I think I'm good with my choice. But I want to play with an iPhone Air just to see what it's like. Though the color options look a little anemic, to say the least. If you compare the sky blue to the mist blue, it's just sad. It looks like white once met blue, and then had significant memory loss and tried to remember what blue looked like. And they don't even have a green, which is just sad. Though to be fair, it would be the same as whatever that brand of sparkling flavored water that doesn't have flavor in, that's really popular in the US.
LaCroix.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah. Was once in the room with a strawberry and tried to evoke the memory of that.
Yeah, the colors are a little sad, although, as Apple would probably say, they're very airy. Now let's talk about the Pro and the Pro Max, because this, of course, is at the high end of the pricing. So we've gone from the 17 at starting at $799 to Air, which starts at $999, to the Pro, which starts at $1099. The smaller Pro, the Pro, not the Pro Max, is 6.3 inches, which is comparable to the iPhone 17. And then the Pro Max has a 6.9 inch screen size. Now, bear in mind, that is in comparison to the 6.5 inch of the iPhone Air. So quite a bit larger in the scheme of things than the iPhone Air. Unlike the Air and the 17, the Air has, again, that titanium frame. The 17 has an aluminum frame, but unlike both of them, the 17 Pro has an aluminum unibody. So this is a little bit different from just having a frame. Apple sort of engineered this whole unibody enclosure so that the device is encased in this unibody that has all of the stuff built in such a way. It's kind of complicated to explain, but essentially it's all about better dissipating heat and keeping things as safe as possible. So yes, instead of doing it in titanium, which we've had in the past, aluminum was used. It's, of course, very light, but we think that a big part of that is because of that thermal conductivity. I've heard complaints from folks with their iPhone 16 Pros that titanium can get a little warm. And so Apple, on top of creating this unibody, also added a vapor chamber. There is water sealed inside of this chamber, and it helps to move heat away from the A19 Pro chip. So like the Air, this also has the A19 Pro inside and gives you everything that you would expect outside of that. So once again, you get your Super Retina XDR display, like you do across the rest of the lineup, the ProMotion tech that you get across the rest of the lineup, always on display dynamic island. The only thing that changes here with the frame is that it's a unibody aluminum. The A19 Pro chip in the iPhone 17 Pro and Pro Max is a little bit better. It's got a 6-core GPU as opposed to a 5-core GPU. And Apple quotes up to 39 hours of video playback. So quite a bit more battery. And that's the idea here, is that, look, what do we do if we go, it's the por qué no los dos, right? It's the why not do both of we can do thin and light because we're Apple. So here's an Air for you, thin and light. Here are the compromises that need to be made. Now let's not compromise. Let's make a Pro device that doesn't need to be thin and light because we've got that over there. Let's give it a great big battery and then also make sure that the camera system is what we would want it to be. So it's got a main, an ultra wide, and a telephoto lens, Rosemary's favorite, each of them 48 megapixels. And what that means is you've got some different zoom options, 0.5x, which is the ultra wide, 1x, 2x, 4x, and 8x are all of the options on this lens. So Rosemary could have been standing at the front door of her parents' house instead of the back door, right, leading to the garden, and have taken a photo of the tent at that 8x optical zoom. Apple does some clever stuff with its cameras, with with its lenses, rather, of being able to kind of take a photo and do an optical like zoom. And so that's something to bear in mind. But it's been my experience that it does a pretty good job of pulling that off. So yeah, I think when it comes to the Pro and Pro Max, of course, the first question is, can you afford this? If you're sort of like on the verge of, okay, the Air or the Pro, look at what you feel you can afford. And if you can afford to go up more and you don't need it to be this thin, light option, then I think the Pro really starts to make sense for anybody who's existing kind of right in that space, particularly because all those delicious camera lenses that you get, which is really nice.
Yes. Yeah, it is worth mentioning that the battery life quoted, at least on the US Apple comparison website, applies to the eSIM only model phones, which every iPhone in the US sold is eSIM only. The iPhone Air is eSIM only everywhere in the world, so that one doesn't change. But the iPhone 17, 17 Pro, and 17 Pro Max in the UK, at least, and probably most countries that are not the US, still have a physical SIM card slot because many of our carriers are not yet able to support eSIM. Support for that is growing, obviously, everywhere around the world, but that, in the case of the 17 Pro, takes the battery life down from 33 hours to 31 hours, and for the 17 Pro Max, that takes it down from 39 to 37 hours. So, it's about a 2-hour difference taken up by that SIM card slot. Personally, I do only have an eSIM, so I would love to have an eSIM only option. However, as I mentioned, I passed the iPhone down to my parents, and my parents are on a carrier that at this moment in time at least does not have support for eSIMs, and I couldn't guarantee that they will by next year, if I'm being perfectly honest. So, it's worth keeping that in mind if you're looking at the comparison information, just to see, what is or is not going to be the case with yours if you are looking at upgrading. Now, if you did buy a new iPhone last year, do you need to upgrade? Depends on your personal situation, but I'm really looking forward to that 8x optical zoom. There's just so much that I could do with that. And also, I have found this iPhone with the titanium, it does get pretty toasty. I've been using my Razer MagSafe cooler on it quite a bit over the last year as I've been doing things. And my dad, with the 15 Pro, is on holiday in Barbados and has had a number of times where the phone has got a bit too hot and just said, no, I can't take photos right now, which is not great when you are trying to use it as a camera. I have suggested he stops keeping it in his pocket next to his body, which is also quite warm. That apparently putting it in my mom's handbag is actually, significantly helping because it's not right next to a really warm body that is providing more heat back to the iPhone. But it will be good to have better thermals on that. So that'll be good. It's also worth noting that the newest fast charging that was quoted and talked about in the keynote, where you'll be able to recharge the iPhone, I can't remember how much it was. Was it 50% in 20 minutes or so, Micah?
I think it was 50%. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's using the latest version of USB-C power delivery, which a lot of chargers don't actually support. Even if they support USB-C power delivery, or PD, as it's often abbreviated to, they probably don't support the newest hardware version of that yet. So the only charger that I know of that is going to be able to do that is sold by Apple. It's about $40. It's not actually extortionately expensive, but if you are looking forward to that because you are somebody that randomly, like my dad, discovers that you forgot to charge your iPhone for the last 2 days and you're about to leave the house and you need to charge your phone, you've got 20 minutes, I'm going to be getting him one of those chargers because we are going to need that in our household.
Anything else for advice for people as they are setting out to choose their new phone?
I would start by actually having a digital declutter of your current iPhone. Go and have a look in the storage information under settings. So that's under settings, general, and storage. And just see, first of all, how much space are you actually taking up on your current device? Could you maybe drop down a tier? And secondly, how much space is being taken up by apps that you do not use and you have not opened in a while? So if you swap the size, which is what the apps list automatically sorts by, if you swap that down to the last used date and you go, hey, okay, I'm going to scroll to the bottom of this list and see, the apps that I have never, ever used during the time that I've had this phone. How much space could I save? Because you'll probably find that there's a whole bunch of things where I'm looking at this going, what is this? And why do I have this installed? Definitely worth having a bit of a clear out and getting rid of some of those apps that you never use before you decide exactly which device you're upgrading to. Because if it turns out you've got 80 gigabytes of data taken up by an app that you've not used in 6 months, do you need that 80 gigabytes of data? Or do you maybe want to drop down a tier and maybe offload some music if you need that app again, and just swap things in and out as needed? So yeah, worth having a little clear out first and doing a frank evaluation with yourself. If you have last year's iPhone, do you need this year's iPhone? And if you're in the iPhone upgrade program, it's a lot easier to go, yeah, I'll just trade it in and get the new one. Cool. But maybe you don't have to upgrade every year, or maybe you do want to. And the other thing to remember is, are you going to be paying for Apple Care? And are you buying a case? Because those are also things that you should remember to factor into the cost. You don't have to buy Apple Care immediately with the new iPhone, but you've got a short window for buying it after you've bought the phone. So it's worth considering that as part of your cost for upgrading as to whether or not it's worth it. And also, don't forget to buy a new case unless you're somebody that goes caseless. The cases for the 16 Pro do technically fit, but they're going to cover the camera, the flash and the light sensor on the camera. So that would be a problem, and vice versa. So you're going to need to upgrade your case. Apple has some nice options there for about $50, but there are other options too, as we will talk about in a moment.
All right. I believe I can hear the music. It's time for Shortcuts Corner. This is Shortcuts Corner, the part of the show where you write in with your shortcuts requests, and Rosemary Orchard, our shortcuts expert, provides a response. And in this week's Shortcuts Corner, Rosemary has an update for us with the introduction of iOS 26.
Yes, I do. And it's quite exciting. And it's not strictly shortcuts related, but it's HomeKit related. Unfortunately, I don't have any compatible hardware to show this off or test this. I've made some fake versions of it, but it doesn't quite work correctly. It's a little bit wonky. So I'm going to have to try and actually buy a new HomeKit compatible thermostat. I don't know what I'm going to hook it up to because I don't have central heating in my home. I have individual radiators in every room. But I don't know. Maybe I can upgrade my parents' thermostat for the show. But there is a new feature in iOS 26 in the Home app, which is the adaptive temperature. And that is basically your thermostat will update automatically based on when you go to sleep, if you've gone on holiday, if you're away from home and you're on your way home, and it will allow you to adjust the temperature to save energy. So people may remember the Nest thermostats from Google, which can see when you're like walking in front of it and go, there are people at home, therefore I should have the heating on, versus I have not seen anybody in hours, I should have the heating off, and so on and so forth. And, they can figure out when you're coming home, what your regular schedule is, and learn from that. Well, this is the HomeKit equivalent. It does also, and what I really love about this, does respond to the sleep schedule created on your iPhone to adjust the temperature for you based on when you're sleeping and waking up. So if usually you get up at, say, 7:30 in the morning, that you adjust your schedule so that to get up really early for a, say, 6 a.m. flight, so you need to leave home around 3 a.m., it will adjust the temperatures on the thermostats automatically for you based on that. And yeah, this is a feature that's existed in thermostats themselves previously, just automatically, as part of their hardware feature set or software feature set, but they've never integrated with the sleep schedule set up on the iPhone. And also on top of that, it's never been something that you could see in HomeKit. So it's nice to see that this is coming, and I would really like to give that a play at some point. I just need the correct hardware. It will also require a home hub, such as an Apple TV or a HomePod. And the thermostat is one that has to be Matter compatible. And also, very important, you need to have location services enabled. I've had a small rise in people who have been messaging the show recently saying, hey, my HomeKit stuff isn't turning on lights and so on when I get home. And they've had location services disabled on their iPhones. That, I'm afraid, is not going to work. If you want things to work based on your location, you need to turn on location services. I'm sorry to break the news to you folks. I understand privacy is a significant concern, but you need to, if you want the benefits of the location information, you have to share the location information. That's unfortunately the trade-off there. So yeah, it is, yeah, it's exciting to see this is coming, and it also ties in with the energy usage things that were added to HomeKit last year, which I believe is still only supported by 1 or 2 energy companies in America. I know California, they had one on the list, but yeah, there's nothing related to that over here in the UK. But it's good to see energy efficiency making its way into HomeKit even more. So don't forget to update your Apple TVs and your HomePods to the latest OS 26 for those, which you can do through the Home app.
And now it is time for us to round out this episode with our app caps. The apps or gadgets we've been using that we want to share with all of you because we think they're awesome. I know my app has come up before, particularly I think it was on an episode about Apple Design Awards, but I want to talk about it again because I just love it so much. It's an app called Art of Fauna, Cozy Puzzles. And Art of Fauna is sort of like a slide puzzle app that lets you make different, you're basically trying to put back together an illustration of animals. And so here, it's looking like it's going to be cheetahs. And so I have some different options here, and I kind of slide them around and try to lock them in place. And as you tap and hold and slide to move them into place, what happens is they start to lock together as you are figuring out where the different pieces go. And once you get them in place, then they start to form the photo. But what's cool about this is it actually has 2 different modes, because some people are maybe not as visually inclined and would instead want to make it into a word puzzle. And so what you can do is in the top right corner, you can tap on this little rotate icon and it switches to text. And this text is information about the animal that's on the front side. And instead of working with with the photos, we can work with the text instead. So it's looking like this is probably going to say up here at the top, I've got HERN space Africa, comma. I'm thinking that's either going to be southeastern or southern Africa. And so what I would do is look for SOUTH. And now we can see that that lines up. And then what I like to do is I like to switch back and forth between the two options, because what ends up happening typically for me is I can see how some of these go together in visual ways, and sometimes they go together better via the text. But as I start to build it out, then I can go back to the visual version and see more of what it is I'm trying to put together. I love this because it works with a part of my brain that is not incredibly sort of front of mind. And so I will typically listen to an audiobook, or, you might listen to a podcast while I am going through and attempting to solve these puzzles. And it's just this perfect, I don't know why, but I lock in perfectly with it and it with me, and I can kind of get into a flow as I'm attempting to put together this puzzle. Now, this is an Apple Arcade game, so you do need to have an Apple Arcade subscription to be able to play it. But if you have not yet done your free trial of Apple Arcade, this is a fun game that you might want to play and, kick off your Apple Arcade subscription. Of course, if you are buying a new device, many of Apple's new devices come with a sort of extended trial, right, of Apple Arcade. And so that may be an opportunity as well for you to try out one of these games. And for me, yes, it is this game called, once again, Art of Fauna, Cozy Puzzles. And I do find them quite cozy. I honestly could just play like I'm going to run out of options. I've done Welcome to Fauna, 10 out of 10. I think I'm on the Okavango Delta right now. Then I've done all of Big Sur, all of Eastern Australian forests, all of Echoes of Extinction, all of Mesoamerican Barrier Reef. And so I don't have too many left, and I don't know what I'm going to do when I run out, but they're not always coming out with new ones, but they come out with new ones with some regularity. And it's just so delightful. I love this app. Art of Fauna, Cozy Puzzles. And yes, they won the Apple Design Award for inclusivity this year. So congratulations to the team for that. And congratulations for making an app that I just adore. Rosemary, tell us about your app cap.
Well, my app cap is sort of a prompt. If you're buying a new iPhone, don't forget, order a new case. And secondly, I have picked this case up because I've been intrigued by JetTech for a while. So it's JETECH, JetTech. And they offer some really slim cases. It's kind of hard to see how slim exactly this is, but it barely adds any thickness to an iPhone. I've popped it on my 16 Pro since it arrived just to give it a little try and see how it feels. But this case was $15. Okay, so we're not talking like Moose or Mouse or, any of Otterbox or anything like that. The $50 cases, Apple's cases are $50+. This is a cheap case, but it's got a decent amount of, sturdiness to it. I'm not saying that you could drop it off the side of a building and your iPhone would survive, but I feel like it would do pretty well if you just drop your iPhone out of your pocket or you miss trying to put it into your bag or whatever, standard things. So there's a couple of things I like about this case. First of all, it comes in colors to match the new iPhone, including a nice dark blue and an orange. So you can see, what the color's like. And secondly, and this one is perhaps me being a little bit picky, but I've had a couple of cases where the material above the camera control is really sort of squishy. That's the best way I could describe it. So this is a spitching case, which I've been using this for a while, and I quite like it. And to be fair to Spidgeon, this is just like the material around the top of the case is, the closest to the screen is just, it's designed to just be kind of squishy so that you can easily get your phone in and out. So I can bend this entire sidewall in, and that's not a problem. But this bit here is just a little bit flimsy. I also had a mouse case, and for some reason it kind of broke near one of the volume buttons, so it would kind of like bulge out under the phone. I need to contact Mouse about that because I think that there's an issue with that particular case and they might replace it. But this one, this is a thin piece of plastic, okay? So there is going to be some flex to it, but this does not bend anywhere near as much, okay? I'm putting a reasonable amount of force onto that material above the camera control, and yeah, it's bending a little bit, but it's not bending that much, and I'm quite liking this case. I also like the way that there is a little loop there to pop a lanyard into one side, and the way that the buttons are designed is really hard to see this on camera, but the buttons are attached at the top, and then there's a little open section underneath them to make it easy for them to press. So this feels like a decent case. I'm going to be giving it a go for a little while. It does have all the buttons on there. I appreciate the fact that on the volume buttons, again, a little difficult to see on camera, they've marked plus and minus, and there's a little power icon on the power button. Things like that help people who maybe don't update their iPhones as much, and, especially somebody who's coming from a much older iPhone that has the power button on the top of the phone, and now suddenly it's on the side, and there's other buttons on the other side, there's 3 buttons on this side, there's 2 buttons on this side, there's a lot of buttons. What's going on? Having like little images that you can look at to identify what something means is great. It's not in Braille, which, would have been a nice option for accessibility. But from what I can gather, folks who use Braille are also pretty good at memorizing the feel of where buttons are, and the proximity of the volume up button to the action button should make that a little easier to pick up on. So yeah, I'm really liking this case. I have just popped it on a 16 Pro for the time being, but at $15, or I believe it's $12.99 here in the UK, for a slim MagSafe case, it doesn't add too much bulk to your phone, but does add a lanyard slot and some other bits. Pretty nice. It does not support Apple's fancy new lanyard, I should say, but it will support like a decent wrist strap or something, so you don't have to worry about dropping your phone off the side of a cliff as you're leaning out to take that perfect picture. But also, you don't need to lean out on the new phone. 8x optical zoom.
Good point. Alrighty, folks. That is going to bring us to the end of this episode of iOS Today. Of course, you can reach out to us. iOS Today at twit.tv is how you get in touch. I want to remind you all about Club Twit. Twit.tv/Club Twit is where you go to sign up. $10 a month, $120 a year. When you join the club, you gain access to some awesome benefits. All of our shows ad-free, just the content. You also gain access to our special feeds that have loads of great stuff, including our coverage of news events, our bits and clips and other great things, and then also our Club Twit shows like Micah's Crafting Corner and Stacy's Book Club and some of those as well. Oh, I forgot to mention too, you get access to the Discord. And of course, that is a fun place to go to chat with your fellow Club Twit members and those of us here at Twit. So if that sounds good to you, head to twit.tv/Club Twit to sign up. And yeah, we kick things off with a 2-week free trial. So give it a go. See what you think. We look forward to it. Rosemary Orchard, if people would like to follow you online and check out all the great work you're doing, where should they go to do so?
Well, the best place is rosemaryorchard.com, which has got links to apps, books, podcasts, and all the social media sites where you can find me, with the exception of Discord, because I like to hang out in the Club Twit Discord and have a chat with our listeners during the show. Adam has just been asking some good questions about the camera control, and one of the settings changed, and so I was able to point him into the right direction. And some other people are having a chat about how do you pronounce some of these brand names for different cases and things like that, which is very interesting. Micah, where can folks find you?
If you're looking for me online, I'm at Micah Sargent on many a social media network, or you can head to chihuahua.coffee. That's CHIHUAHUA.coffee, where I've got links to the places I'm most active online. Be sure to check out my other shows here on the network, including Tech News Weekly, Hands on Apple, Hands on Tech, and we'll see you again next week for another episode of iOS Today.
No matter how much spare time you have, Twit.tv has the perfect tech news format for your schedule. Stay up to date with everything happening in tech and get tech news your way with Twit.tv. Start your week with This Week in Tech for an in-depth, comprehensive dive into the top stories every week. And for a midweek boost, Tech News Weekly brings you concise, quick updates with the journalists breaking the news. Whether you need just the nuts and bolts or want the full analysis, stay informed with Twit.tv's perfect pairing of tech news programs.